Body horror, also known as biological horror, is a particularly grotesque subgenre of horror that specifically refers to disturbing violations of the human body or that of any other creature. It's something that I tend to try and avoid in day-to-day life. I like my body and the bodies of those around me intact and unviolated. Thank you very much. When it comes to the fictional worlds of video games, however, I might be tempted to take a peek, albeit cautiously, at the unholy creations our favourite developers might have wrought. Throughout this especially unsightly video, we're going to be appraising a whole butcher's shop window of sickly meat monsters, poking their fleshy bits with a very long stick and arranging them in some ungodly semblance of a ranking based on how disturbing and unsettling they are. So take a moment to prepare yourself before I take you on a journey through a museum of some of the most sickening, twisted, and gag reflex-inducing abominations to have ever stalked the digital realm. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 most disturbing body horror enemies in video games. Number 10. The Strog, Quake 4. In Raven Software's 2005 FPS Quake 4, players take on the role of Marine Corporal Matthew Kane, and the story follows on from Quake 2, pitting the player against the brutal alien cyborg race known as the Strog. On their own, the Strog, while intimidating, aren't all that scary themselves unless you look at them too closely, but they have a fondness for forcefully enlisting new recruits, and a large percentage of the Strog's forces consist of heavily augmented humans. Even this wouldn't be so bad, but the whole thing is made hundreds of times worse by the fact that players become intimately familiar with the process of strogification. Kane is captured partway through the campaign, and the player is forced to watch in first person as he undergoes the brutal transformation, fully aware while sharp implements are poked into him and limbs are unceremoniously removed and replaced with cybernetic upgrades. It's an infamous sequence that will have all but the most unhinged players cringing and looking away, squirming in their gaming chair at the whole ordeal. Fighting the Strog minions beyond this point, knowing how they came to be, makes the whole thing that bit more uncomfortable. Worst roller coaster ever. Number 9. The Egg-Burdened, Dark Souls. Nature is beautiful, right? But the uncomfortable truth is, somewhere amidst all that greenery and under all those rolling hills, something is laying its eggs inside something else. The team at From Software were fully aware of this somewhat unpleasant fact of life and took it to unsightly extremes in 2011's Dark Souls. Made all the prettier in 2018's Dark Souls Remastered, the Egg-Burdened are a group of fellows who carry gigantic bulbous egg sacs on their backs. So weighed down are they by the growing embryos attached to their bodies that they can only crawl around pathetically while their nutrients are consumed by their unsightly parasites. They also seem to host these gigantic growths willingly, such is their dedication to their so-called fair lady. If and when the player does engage in combat with these pathetic, twisted creatures, the enormous maggots that were languishing inside the eggs will pop out and grab them, and when the egg-burdened are defeated, the eggs on their backs hatch mercilessly, overwhelming opponents with masses of slithering critters. Worst of all, the egg-burdened are capable of infecting the player with their eggy affliction, except player characters will have the egg appear on their head. I would make an egghead joke, but, I'm too disgusted. Number 8. Temptresses, Dante's Inferno. Visceral Games' Dante's Inferno has no shortage of graphic depictions of twisted humanity and confronted, tortured flesh, but the abomination we're choosing for today's list is probably the most memorable, solely based on the body part that the body horror focuses on. The Temptresses are servants of Queen Cleopatra and lived lives of hedonistic and lustful pursuit, thus becoming embodiments of carnal desire upon descending to the underworld. Whilst that may sound somewhat alluring, the Temptresses are anything but once their methods of attack are unveiled. For you see, when these ladies leap into action, their lady parts tear open to reveal a very suggestive and very off-putting appendage that they use to lash out at protagonist Dante. This profane method of attack is sure to bring up all manner of uncomfortable thoughts and imagery in both male and female onlookers alike, and makes the Temptress the most unpalatable entity in a game absolutely crawling with disturbing imagery and barbarous depictions of cruelty. It does make you wonder about the mental states of the guys and gals at Visceral Games. I wonder if Dante's Inferno got all of that unpleasantness out of their systems. I'm just looking down their list of games and, no it didn't. More on that later. Number 7. Killer Peach, Spirit Hunter NG. Developed by Experience, Spirit Hunter NG is one of those visual novel adventures with a story focused on investigating haunted locations and dealing with the spirits found there. The game has a gradually developing horror theme, with the nocturnal spirit investigations resulting in some pretty horrid encounters. Even the cute tortoises have scary faces in their shells. The winner in the horribleness stakes, however, is an entity called Killer Peach. Having the body of a woman in business dress but with 3 animal heads, that of a pheasant, a monkey and a dog, grotesquely attached, Killer Peach cuts quite the intimidating figure. Those concentrating too much on the horribly out-of-place animal heads might miss Killer Peach's actual head though. There it is. Look, the one dangling from the monkey's mouth by its hair. If, like me, the thought of pulling hair out of the plug hole in the bath makes you retch, imagine having this woman's spooky head of hair spewing forth from your monkey mouth. You have a monkey mouth in this instance as well. Interestingly, Killer Peach is a somewhat sympathetic character once you get to know her, as her spirit is hunting gang members who caused a fire that took the life of her family. Hold on though, where do you reckon she got that dog head? Oh, no, sorry, totally irredeemable. Number 6. Our Lady of the Charred Visage, Blasphemous. Developed by The Game Kitchen, Blasphemous is a 2D Metroidvania with something of a religious theme. With the possible exception of Super 3D Noah's Ark, video games with a religious theme don't tend to focus on the brighter sides of the subject, and Blasphemous is no exception. The developers went full Old Testament on us with this one, cooking up a despicable meat platter of unsettling enemies, upsetting background elements, and disturbing malformed bosses to fight. Our choice for this list is a certain sainted former beauty known as Our Lady of the Charred Visage, because under no circumstances is it a good thing to have part of your brain exposed. Before becoming a monstrous guardian of one of the 3 humiliations, Our Lady was a stunning beauty named Aurea, but so disturbed was she by the fanatical worship that her otherworldly beauty incited, she dipped her face into boiling oil. Seems like maybe a bit of an overreaction? When I get tired of people prostrating themselves before my gorgeousness, I just pull my hood up. Anyway, her face would smoulder eternally following this contritious act, and her lumpy brain would also poke out of her forehead, providing a handy weak point for protagonist the penitent one to stab with his sword. I'm getting a headache just looking at it. Number 5. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, Elden Ring. Like many of our lists with a disturbing theme, it would be very easy to fill them with the monstrosities that routinely slither out of From Software's studios. In an effort to maintain diversity, we've resisted doing just that, but had to go back to the From Software well once more to bring up Elden Ring's Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, but not in the same way that he brings up his sword. Anyway, while there is a humanoid face in there somewhere, Rykard is an example of body horror when related to the body of a creature, as that big snake's body has definitely seen better days. Once a demigod who dabbled too enthusiastically in the ways of a serpent-worshipping religion, Rykard seems like your common or garden office building-sized snake at first, but once the second phase of the fight is triggered, the disturbing realities of this creature become more apparent. You see, Rykard's serpentine body is riddled with unnatural openings, and from within these openings, pathetically flailing limbs erupt, conjoined to the creature's bloody flesh. These limbs presumably belonged to Rykard's champions and followers, whom he consumed upon merging with the blasphemous snake deity under the volcano. Seems a bit extreme, but when you're hungry, I suppose. Number 4. Everything, World of Horror. Horror manga artist Junji Ito is hailed as one of the masters of body horror. This deceptively normal-looking fellow is capable of bringing life to some of the most obscene depictions of stretching, contorting, and hideously combining bodies you're likely to see, and indie role-playing title World of Horror is one big shout-out to Junji Ito's works, with some Lovecraftian vibes chucked in there for an extra dose of creepy. Presented in a pen and ink style that evokes the manga of the aforementioned purveyor of horrific imagery, World of Horror tasks its players with averting a looming apocalypse by travelling around a fictional Japanese town, encountering disturbing entities and taking them down in turn-based battles. While most turn-based RPGs are likely to throw orcs, wolves, and slimes at you, World of Horror pits its hapless protagonist against creatures like the Vent Crawler, Scissor Woman, and This Happy Couple. Notice too that the player character's portrait in the bottom right-hand corner also undergoes some unsettling transformations. Perhaps the most disturbing thing about World of Horror, though, is that its lone developer, Pavel Kosminski, reportedly worked as a dentist while developing this game. Makes you wonder what's going through their minds while they're poking your mouth with sharp implements, doesn't it? Number 3. Everything, Clive Barker's Jericho. Yep, we're doing it again! Clive Barker's Jericho is one of those titles that, with tighter gameplay, might have been an absolutely legendary example of the horror genre. While the teammate AI and awkward controls weren't quite up to snuff, Clive Barker's Jericho absolutely triumphs when it comes to hideously contorted enemies that desperately need to be put out of their misery, and that's why we're once again digging it out from the abyss into which it was cast. Released on the PC, PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2007, Clive Barker's Jericho tells the story of a squad of supernatural soldiers trying to stop the uprising of a creature known as the Firstborn, a being created by God before the birth of humanity that was so disturbing that it was banished into the aforementioned abyss. The Firstborn itself proves to be some kind of spooky alien child, but the minions across the game's various time periods fit the body horror definition worryingly perfectly. Whether it's your common or garden hideously distorted cultist, or the delightful fusion of bloody body parts and spiky bits known as the corpse's behemoth, players are sure to find something to tickle the old gag reflex. This sickening parade of mindless, deformed abominations is sure to make Clive Barker's Jericho tough for anyone to get through, well, that and the pants gameplay. Number 2. Asphyxia, Silent Hill Homecoming. The Silent Hill franchise contains innumerable grotesque entities that unsettle with their appearance and disturb with their symbolic implications. We could have just said everything again and provided you with a gallery of abhorrent organisms, but we thought that we wouldn't cheat this time and have selected a specific creature encountered in 2008's Silent Hill Homecoming, developed by Double Helix Games. Beating the release of the Human Centipede by an entire year, Silent Hill Homecoming features Asphyxia, who, as the name suggests, is the physical manifestation of Judge Margaret Holloway's memories of murdering her own daughter by suffocation. Asphyxia emerges from a very suggestive-looking portal in the Overlook Penitentiary, grabbing poor old Deputy Wheeler and then attacking player character Alex Shepard using its oversized arms and long body as weapons. Alex finally puts an end to this thing's wretched existence by mounting it and pulling aside the hands that sprout from the creature's neck that were constantly covering its mouth, implying that breathing is fatal to Asphyxia in a tragic mockery of the way Margaret's daughter met her end. As expected from the Silent Hill franchise, Asphyxia is a truly repulsive example of body horror. Its big bum does look kind of funny when it swings around though. Look at that. Number 1. Necromorphs, Dead Space series. When the term body horror is thrown about in conversation, the go-to piece of media to help illustrate its meaning is likely to be John Carpenter's The Thing. Dante's Inferno creators' visceral games were no doubt inspired by this sci-fi depiction of violated humanity for their 2008 hit Dead Space, and they showed absolutely zero restraint or chill when concocting their own take on body-contorting space violence. Necromorphs are the result of a transmitted infection that can reanimate and reconfigure corpses and other tissue into horrific, deadly, and near unrecognizable approximations of life. Solely intent on gaining more corpses to continue to spread the infection, the necromorphs are repeatedly encountered throughout the entire Dead Space franchise, their bile-inducing antics and horrific transformations displayed in intricate, gruesome detail. Their apparent goal is to form into what's known as a Brethren Moon, a planetoid-sized coming together of twisted corpses and dead flesh, and the last known stage of the necromorph lifeform. That's right, the good folks at Visceral Games pulled out all of the stops when it came to body horror and came up with what is surely the absolute limit of what this genre has to offer, a bona fide meat moon. Well done, guys. Right, that's enough body horror for now. I'm going to look up games with cute teddies in them instead. Oh god, no, why?